Good morning. Good morning. Bonjour. Buenos dias. Bom dia. My name is Mariana Warth. I'm publisher editor from Pallas Editora, Rio de Janeiro. And I thank you very much for the invitation for moderating this roundtable this morning. So I will first start with a presentation about BABELICA, what we are doing here. September 21st, 2022 is International Bibliodiversity Day, a day created in 2010 by the independent publishers in Latin America and which has spread to all continents. A day that marks Spring Day in the Southern Hemisphere, celebrating editorial diversity and bibliodiversity. This year, for the International Day of Bibliodiversity, the International Alliance of Independent Publishers has launched the first edition of BABELICA, an online space that offers a selection of titles from the catalog of international independent publishers. This year, BABELICA presents a selection of more than 200 titles from 68 independent publishers in 37 countries. These titles can be found on the website in the link we all know. The titles presented on BABELICA are available for sale and can be purchased online on the publishing house's sales website. The BABELICA platform is open all year round, so you can find the titles offered in the coming days and months. The BABELICA space also offers online roundtables to encourage dialogue, to exchange, and to share. This roundtable is part of BABELICA 2002 program. It is recorded and then will be available on the Alliance YouTube channel. During this roundtable, don't hesitate to intervene on the chat for any questions. A time for questions, answers, and exchanges is planned at the end of the roundtable. Thank you for your presence, and we'll start. So now we are going to talk about the guide to good practice. Where does it come from? It was based on ideas and discussions during the International Conference of the Independent Publishers in Pamplona, developed by working groups such as public book policies, freedom to publish, digital and book ecology. This guide reflects the diversity of practices of publishers in different environments. This guide is a dynamic document which will be enriched over time and reassure the intercultural aspect of Alliance, respecting each context and realities. Finally, this is a document that does not want to give lessons, but to push publishers through practical examples so we can always improve our independent way of life. So now I will present, we are going to talk about some topics that are in the guide. We have some subjects. We have decolonial publishing, ecological publishing, feminist LGBTQI+ publishing, freedom of publishing, social publishing, and solidarity publishing. And I will present each speaker by the time they are going to speak, okay? So I will start with Dieulermesson, Petit, Frère. Just get here, okay. So Dieulermesson, Petit, Frère is co-founder of Édition, poet and literary critic. He is a contributor to the journal Delos and editor of the journal Legs and Literature, where he has published numerous articles on Haitian literature. He's a professor at the French Institute in Haiti. He is the author of the essay Haiti, Literature and Decadence, Études sur la poésie de 1804, I can't speak this number in French, to 2010, Lex Edition. Je découvre Jacques-Stéphane Alexis, Lex Edition 2022, and co-editor of Jacques-Stéphane Alexis, Legs and Literature. His research's interest includes eroticism, the body, identity, migration, and Haiti literature. Dieulermesson is currently a doctoral student in French language and literature at the École doctorale Culture et Société, attached to the Laboratoire Lettres, Idées, Savoir of the University Paris et Créteil under the supervision of Yolène Parisot. So now I pass the word to Dieulermesson, and when it's in the end of 5 minutes, I will do like this and he will know. Okay, good talk. Thank you.
Maria, je dis bonjour à tous et à toutes.
Thank you, Maria, and hello, everyone. Thank you, Laurence, Mariam, and Camille from the permanent team of the Alliance. So they are the foundation of this alliance with the participation of publishing houses and other colleagues of the Alliance. So I'm not going to come back on the context of the drafting of this guide to good practice. I'm not going to come back either on the terms that define the vision of the decolonization publishing. I'm going to go to the aspect of decolonization so that I can talk about the main ideas and give an example of implementation for what I think. So about the Leg Edition publisher, so the house that I'm part of. So to be short, I would say that it's an idea for publishing houses. So when we talk about decolonial aspect, it's something that is part of diversity while affirming its own vision and its own conception of the world, without any form of subordination or influence. So in the framework of the guide, this is what we called decolonial publishing. So it's something with openness, dynamic exchanges, relationships. So all of that while still having a singular identity in its own way of thinking. And it's in publishing direction. So you can think about publishing in terms of diversity and diversality. So this is what we think when we say decolonial publishing. So an example of implementation for me, as I've said before, I will take the example of my publisher. So within Legs Édition, we try to adopt behavior line that goes accordingly to our policies. So that makes diversity or diversality our main strength. We all know that it's not easy when you're an independent publisher to have big projects with not many means, many resources, and without receiving many proposals. Sometimes you even receive indecent proposals from big groups that are dominant in the sector. But in our publishing house, we try really hard to keep our publishing line. I could say a lot of things, but I will focus on one element. the dynamization of the local economy. Example, the operations of book donations in Haiti. As a southern country, we constantly see book donations by big organizations. So book donations represent, for me, a good way to make the sector grow, because it allows to 3 pillars of the chain to live: the publishing house, the librarian, and the author. So, concrete example, sometimes we have foreign organizations that come to us in Haiti because they want to buy author book published outside of the country, but are also available within the country. So what do? We suggest the Asian publishing of this book, and we refer them to our librarian. Sometimes the person that is the link between the library, the publishing house, would like to see the foreign edition because it's what their superior want. So the superiors want to have the foreign publishing. So what do? We can find a way. So we can send a book for with a reduction, so as small as possible on the price of the book, because it's an interesting quantity. So for loyalty issues, we can do that even if we reduce our benefits. So that's an example that we can have when it comes to decolonial publishing. So that's just an example with operations of book donations. So I've seen Mariana just giving me a sign, so I think my 5 minutes are up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dieulermesson. We want to hear more, and surely we are coming back to this subject in the end of the exposures of each speaker. So now we are going to ecological publishing with Carlos Vela and Dorota Hartwich. I will just present them very briefly. So let's go. Dorota Johanna Hartwich studied literature and social science and philosophy in France and then in Poland. She now lives in Poland. Dorota has been a translator from French into Polish since 2010 with the Order of the Arts and the Lettres Chevalier by the French Minister of the Culture. Since 2006, she is the editorial director in Format Publishing in Poland and France. Format is an independent publishing house that focuses on education, illustration quality, and creation. Books are understood as beautiful objects and as reading spaces, as they position the reader in the story, sharpening their eyes, awakening their curiosity and graphic sensitivity. Their ambition, expressing emotions, circulating ideas of diversity and difference, tolerance, going against the grain to break the prejudice and stereotypes, working particularly on the typography, paper, and format. And now Carlos Vela. Carlos has a degree in business administration and a diploma in digital marketing, Universidad del Pacífico, with a specialization in editorial policies and cultural projects, Universidad de Buenos Aires. He has led various digital communication projects and has worked in the publishing sector looking at the issues related to management, promotion, production, and public policies in the frame of books and reading. He is currently president of the board of Editoriales Independientes del Peru. Carlos directs Pintax, a digital communication company focused on the book ecosystem, and co-directs the publishing house Pesopluma. So now the words are with Carlos and Dorota.
Carlos.
Primero, buenos días a todos.
Hello, everybody. My name is Carlos Vela, and I joined from Peru. I would like to share my experiences and examples from the ecological publishing perspective. In Peru, we have already introduced a regulatory framework that enable us to give tools to all agents in the world of book to cooperate in order to stop using plastic bags in books, which is so dangerous for the environment. On the one side, we work with publishers and publishing houses, and the big booksellers chains, who are the main responsibles of the packaging of books. In this sense, we are working on deepening awareness of the citizenship. Many people think that if the book is not properly packaged, it's an used book. In our publishing house, we realize this every time we go and speak with people that buy books. They believe that, and we always explain that even if it's not wrapped in plastic, it's also a new book and it deserves all opportunities. So we try to raise awareness, but sometimes it's difficult because it takes a huge responsibility among all the agents in the world of book, so that citizens are aware of this. It is also important to raise awareness among big chains so that they stop requesting this to publishing houses. Another topic that I wanted to comment on regarding ecological publishing is our motivation to publish and write the books locally, either in the place, in the city where the book has been published. Because this way we can reduce our carbon footprint by reducing all pollution in the transport of books. Last year, we saw an increase of the cost in the cost of production, and it is true that now raw materials are more expensive, not only in Peru, but in the rest of the world. So it might be more sustainable and accessible to publish and print books in Peru. I think we should strike a balance between the economic side of printing a book outside and the carbon footprint linked to it and benefits. A third point that I would like to comment on is that print runs should be sustainable enough. We need to be sustainable while using natural resources, especially when we see international companies that go and print a lot of books and they experience an overstock just to be able to put books there in the shelves of booksellers and to draw the attention of mass media.
Carlos, your microphone is not working, I think.
Sí.
We can't hear you. Now it's mute, now it's back. Can you try again?
¿Se me escucha?
Can you hear me now?
¿Se me escucha?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I was just closing my turn, and I was just trying to summarize what the experience from Peru is. So basically, printing books locally, that is a practice that we are promoting. Try to obtain sustainable print runs in comparison with bigger companies. And thirdly, we are trying not to use additional plastics in order to meet the ecological requirements of the country. That's everything. Thank you.
Very much. Muchas gracias. Now the word goes to Dorota. Thank you.
Bonjour à tout le monde. De mon point de vue, de ma maison
Good afternoon, everyone. So from my point of view, in my independent publishing house that publishes in Poland and France, that exists since 2006, we follow the following principle. So we rethink what's useful and what has been not useful since the beginning. But it's true that we started with 3,000 to 4,000 books 10 years ago. And in the last 4 to 5 years, we were around 2,500, 3,000 books. But now, while we still think about what's useful, expected, and thrown away, we offer printing around 1,500 books, for example, and in some cases, sometimes we only have 500 or 300 copies if we know that the first copy needs to be prioritized. And then we rethink the following steps. So that's for the quantity of copies. But what's important too is planning the number of titles that you publish every year. And in the past, we were always really, really careful. We were always very careful when choosing the titles that we were going to publish. And what's important now is that while keeping our team of only a few people, we don't have the ambition of becoming a big publisher. We still want to keep our planning. We have around 4 to 5 titles per year in France and 7 to 10 titles per year in Poland. And we really want to focus on quality rather than quantity. And then to give you an example of the implementation of this principle that I think is very important, we want to rethink the life of the book. So we have a quite big university town in Poland, Wrocław. You have a library cafe, sorry, with new books. And so you also have secondhand books in that cafe. So it's not really secondhand, sorry, it's rather an antiquity book. And so the idea is to promote these books and to stop the dictatorship of new books that is imposed on us by the book industry and the big publishing houses. So regarding our planning, we have decided to invest more energy, more time, and more capacities to promote and to better diversify our books. So we really want to focus on quality rather than quantity. So for this small conference, I did a small research. I had a short interview with someone who has a company that is the link between publishers and authors, asking what is the level of awareness in Polish publishers. And that level is quite high, actually, but the issue is the realization of our objectives, our needs as conscious publishers, so aware of the issue of global warming. And what is really difficult is the price of certified paper, so with the certificate EFC, which is more expensive than the paper that is not certified. So that's a very important obstacle to take into account. And during the paper crisis, where paper is so expensive, almost as expensive as during the wars, we can see that production, when access to paper was unlimited, it was kind of unreasonable. And when paper becomes more and more expensive and the price of books is higher, we avoid this unreasonable production, and that is unnecessary as well. So I think it's kind of a positive second symptom of this very difficult situation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorota. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you for all your explanation. So we'll keep with Dorota, talking about feminist LGBTQI+, and Dorota will give us her experience on this area. Thank you, Dorota.
Merci. Pour être plus rapide.
Thank you very much. I'll try to be brief. I really have many things to say about it. Not only experiences, I also have facts, and outside also of my publishing house, because this year, 2022, is still a record year when we talk about editing feminist books or LGBTQI+ books in Poland. And it is quite an interesting phenomenon, especially knowing that the political environment in Poland is quite difficult. So I'll give you a few examples. I mean, the context is very difficult since 2019, when the extreme right party focused on oppressing LGBTQI+ community and feminists. And these two communities became the scapegoat of the government. And I really want to underline this, because it's one of the reasons why we see today such emergence of feminist and LGBTQI+ books. So we see today among publishers, left-wing editors or independent publishers, but also in mainstream publisher, we see that there is this increasing number of feminist books and books related to the LGBTQI+ community. And this really illustrates the commitment of feminists and of the LGBTQI+ community in Poland. They are very committed. They are strong activists. They are not afraid to go outside, to speak out, to protest. This, we're really talking about strong activists. And it's a way to criticize the lack of books on feminism linked to the LGBTQI+ community. It's a way also to criticize this lack in publishing. So it's a way to underline the need of these books for the population. So among the publishers that offer different books linked to feminism or LGBTQI+, we see small publishers, but also mainstream publishing houses that have more traditional line. A very interesting example also is that there is a first, there was the opening of the first LGBTQI+ library. The library is called Stonewall. And this library really became very popular. And we see that their clients, their main clients are youth. And most people think that youth are not big readers. They're stuck to their smartphones, watching TikTok or other social networks. Well, after having an interview with the founder of the library, of the bookshop, he told us that they were selling more books in their LGBTQI+ bookshop than in their traditional bookshop. And it's quite an interesting experience, I think. And there's also, well, the Netflix platform and the pandemic that are factors that really brought forwards a new type of Polish publishing. Because as you know, on Netflix and on the films that you have on the platforms, these movies are almost most of the time with political notions, political message in it, and that underline the rights of women's rights and other types of freedom. So it fosters activism. And last example is that the publishing trend that we see increasingly in Poland, this feminist and LGBTQI+ trend, is linked to the fact that the readers are younger, and there's a promotion of books throughout social networks, and it is done through the youth, and it fosters a very good and very positive dynamics for this new field of literature, and that's how the situation is in Poland. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dorota. Sorry to make you go fast in your speaking. I even have notes to make a question in the end for you. Thank you very much. Now we are going to talk about freedom of publishing with Dieulermesson and Hindu. I will just present Hindu, that is her first speak now. And then I will pass the word to Dieulermesson and Hindu, okay? Hindu Chandrasekhar is a publisher and managing editor of Tulika Books, New Delhi. She has been associated with the book publishing industry in India since the early 80s. She began her publishing career with Macmillan India in New Delhi and then worked for several years as a freelancer editor with brief stints of teaching in colleges in Bangalore and Delhi in the intervening years before setting up Tulika Books in 1995. Tulika Books is a small independent publisher of academic books in the social science and humanities, publishing from a broadly left perspective. Its authors include some of India's best-known intellectuals, theorists, and academics. Tulika is best known for its titles in disciplines such as history, economics, and social political theory. Over the years, the publishing house has also developed a niche list in the arts and cultural studies. As a publisher of Tulika Books, Indira Chandrasekhar is a founding partner of the Independent Publishers Distribution Alternatives, a distribution network set up by 8 independent publishers to promote alternative independent publishing in India. She has been a member of the International Alliance of Independent Publishers since almost
Ah, on a perdu notre modératrice.
I think we lost our moderator.
On attend quelques secondes pour voir si Mariana...
Let's wait for a few seconds to see if Mariana is reconnecting to the meeting. Hi, here she is. She's back. All good, Mariana?
I don't know what happened. I just heard someone saying something and then it came off. Sorry. And she's the last sentence, and then I pass the word to Hindu. She's on the editorial board of the Review of Agrarians.
Ah. Oui, je pense qu'il doit y avoir un petit problème de connexion avec...
There seemed to be a small internet connection issue with Mariana. Inu, maybe you can start and go ahead if Mariana...
I think I'll just go ahead.
Mariana's
Maybe
here.
Mariana's internet doesn't like my introduction.
Go on, Hindu. I don't know what's going on here.
Hi, Mariana. Yeah, no, not a problem. You've said all that you had to say about me and more. Thank you. Just to take off from where Mariana introduced me, I think it's useful only to remember that that's the context in which I publish. I'm a small independent, Tulika Books is a small independent publishing house, publishing mostly academic books in the social sciences and humanities, and also to stress the fact, emphasize the fact that we, at least I as the founder of Tulika Books, believes in publishing for social change. It's very much linked to my activist interests, if you can call it that. And therefore the freedom to publish, as you can imagine, is very close to my heart. I'll just read out very briefly two aspects of the freedom to publish that affect us as Tulika Books, as well as most independent small publishers in India. And this has to do with forms of censorship, which is a central question in the freedom to publish. The first is, of course, censorship by the state. It's a vast subject, the question of freedom to publish and censorship, but I'll restrict myself to these two basic aspects. The first form of censorship that we at Tulika and in general independent publishers in India have to face is censorship by the state, which is not an institutionalized form of censorship because we have a constitution that guarantees us several democratic rights, and we are free to go to the courts to challenge these forms of censorship, but they exist nevertheless. The background, our current government at the center, we are a federation of states, a large country with a federation of states. So our current government at the center is a coalition led by right-wing Hindu majoritarian party called the BJP. It follows a political and social agenda of religious divisiveness and communal within quotes, mobilization, that also reflects the influence of various non-state fundamentalist organizations. A key marker of this kind of religious division or communal division within Indian society and politics is the dispute surrounding, or was the dispute surrounding, a mosque, a masjid called the Babri Masjid in Ayodhya. And I'm taking this example from the Freedom to Publish report that the Alliance published, that's put up on our website. So this mosque called the Babri Masjid in Ayodhya was demolished by right-wing majoritarian groups on 6th of December, 1992, more than 30 years back. But the impact of that act of vandalism and divisiveness has had its, it has been huge for the fabric of Indian society for a long, it lasts till today. The Hindu majoritarian forces responsible for the demolition of the mosque claim that the mosque was built over a Hindu temple, and that the place where the mosque was built was originally the birthplace of a Hindu god, Rama. This was a milestone in our political and social history and has informed the politics of India ever since. Now, where Tulika Books enters the picture in terms of a crime committed by us was to publish a book many years after the event of demolition. But while the dispute was still being heard in the courts, and the final verdict has now been reached at the Supreme Court of India a couple of years back, the dispute related to a book in which the co-authors of the book, who are historian archaeologists of repute, basically stated that there is no evidence to say that the Babri Mosque or the Babri Masjid had been erected on the remains of a temple devoted to Lord Rama. And the Archaeological Survey of India, which is the primary archaeological institution led by this, under the state, had been asked by the courts to excavate the site to literally find evidence of a temple, because that was the basis on which this movement was whipped up and communal and religious frenzy was whipped up. And the book we published was a critique of that excavation report, which our authors found to be biased and politically motivated. The court that was hearing the larger case of the Ayodhya dispute actually called us and asked us to make public the findings of a Supreme Court, told us that we were in contempt of court because we had actually published a book but based on an excavation report that was ordered. Anyway, it was a technical kind of bias, and we appeared before the court and we were found guilty of contempt of court, and we were only fined a certain amount. We were not imprisoned, both the authors and the publisher, in this instance, Tulika Books. But that was a landmark experience for us in our political and economic, political and social activist publishing. Thank you. I think I've taken too much time, so I'll stop.
No, thank you. No, but it was a confusing beginning. It's okay. Thank you very much, Indira. Now, Dieulermesson, please.
You're mute.
Your microphone is mute.
Alors, merci. Je rebondis rapidement sur la liberté dans l'édition. Alors, je dirais que tout d'abord...
Thank you very much. Well, regarding this, first of all, it's because we are independent in our publishing house. So we are free. That makes us free. We have the freedom to publishing, to share information, knowledge for the well-being of the audience. Even if it kind of disrupts the established order, the statu quo. So this information are guarantees for the fundamental rights of the individuals. So I'm going to share an example as far as I'm concerned, even if we have subventions from the state to the publishers. We have funds for helping publishing. We see quickly that comes from public funds. So it's the money from the taxpayers. So the state cannot intervene in the choices or the editorial line of the publisher, whatever the form it may take. So it's the same case if it's a private institution, a foundation, or anything else. So the example that comes to mind is quite recent. I think it was 2 years ago, maybe. It was during the pandemic. We submitted a project that was received positively. And at the last moment, during the final phase of signing the contract, someone came to us and let us know that we would receive the funding only and only if we accepted that they would suggest a manuscript. So we said, okay, it's normal, that wouldn't be any issue. And when we received the manuscript, after reading it, we realized that the content was against our policies. We had texts that were against human rights, against women, and that would promote some kind of discrimination. Discrimination on gender, on sex, and would promote also hatred. So what did we do? We suggested to revise the text or delete them. And obviously they did not accept, because they said either you publish the book and you get the funding, or you don't publish the book and you don't have anything else. So it was a take or leave offer. So what did we do? We chose not to publish the book and not receive the funding of that state body. So it's true that we didn't receive any funding, but while making that decision, we stayed faithful to our principles. And it was a way for us to oppose this stigmatization and dehumanization discourse, as it, for example, when you talk about freedom of publishing. So that's a form of oppression, you may say. So it's kind of hidden, but it exists from state and public bodies. So it's the state that wanted to intervene through a person in our editorial line. So that's an example for us that consists, because we respected our editorial line, but we also opposed the stigmatization and dehumanization discourse, because we wanted to promote human rights. So this is what I wanted to say in terms of freedom of publishing.
Thank you very much, Dieulermesson. I'm sorry, my connection is, I don't know what's going on. I don't think it's the connection. I think it's the software that is turning off and coming back. Well, now I will speak very briefly about social publishing. Let me just get my notes here. Well, most of what is written on the good guide of practice of that is written about social publishing, passing through all the bullet points. I'm proud to say that Pallas Editora in Brazil has been working implementing as an organic organic and natural way of working in our publishing house. It means that we pay attention on equity of salaries. We pay attention on, for instance, a program for interns and students. We pay attention to our authors and the authors' rights, and all the list of things that are here, which are very interesting, and I suggest all publishers to read this guide. But there are 2 points that I was more concerned, and I'm bringing here to make a reflection with you, is about to rethink intellectual property so that it doesn't restrict access to knowledge. For me, it's a tricky point that I don't know exactly how to bring a solution to that, because how can we make the knowledge and the ideas accessible to everybody, without harming the author's rights? So, of course, there are many ways of doing this. If we are talking about printed books, there are some ways. If we are talking about, for instance, then I thought about solutions. So I thought about the problems, but perhaps I thought about how to solve these problems. So I thought that, for instance, bringing authors to talk about their books and their literature in schools and universities, it's also a way to make it more democratic, the access of the knowledge, and probably the access of knowledge cannot only be by books. We publish books, but books are made of people and made of people that think. And so if we can bring these people together, it is a way of sharing this knowledge. And the other point that I wanted to share with you, and I think it was also said in other points, and they are crossing here in ecological publishing, for instance, is here about encouraging a fair price for books as cheap as possible. And I think that it seems to be a problem in different countries about the cost of printing and the cost of paper especially. How can we make fair prices for book if the material costs are so expensive lately? In Brazil, the paper is a commodity, and there is a monopoly of the production of the paper, and sometimes we can make the edition, the cost of the edition in our company is very cheap, the revision, etc., the design. But then when it comes to printing the book, the price goes very high. So perhaps as a solution, we can think about more digital publishing, that is, the costs are very low, and the example I gave here in a previous talk was an experience on a library in a bus that was going around many small cities in São Paulo, that it happened perhaps 10 or 15 years ago. And it was a very successful experience on sharing books, not sold, but lending books in a library, in an itinerary library. And I think these are two problematic points from my point of view, but also we can think about solutions. So about social publishing, I think that's it. And now we are having the last talk on solidarity publishing. And then I pass the word again to Indu. And thank you very much. Let's go on.
Thank you, Mariana. I'll quickly read through a very brief note I have on solidarity publishing, which basically underlines collective resistance and collective organization of publishing. Independent publishers in India have worked out several strategies of survival and resistance, some individually, others collectively, and some of which are successful, others not so successful. An early and small effort in this direction that I know of and that I was involved with was the Independent Publishers Group, IPG, that we formed of 10 Delhi independent publishers, believing that to confront the publishing biggies, the big fellows, we needed strength in numbers. The spirit behind the initiative was, let's get together, try and outline some kind of a publishing code, some kind of good practices in publishing, and decide what independent publishing really means. That group is no longer active, but our major achievement, while it was, is that for several years, we as publishers ran a bookshop on the campus of the University of Delhi, which is a very large university with more than 100 affiliated colleges. It was probably the first time in India that a group of publishers turned into booksellers. Then we decided to set up another collective, this time for book distribution of our own books, as well as that of select other independent publishers, which still exists, called the Independent Publishers Distribution Alternatives. This is a partnership of 8 independent publishers with lists ranging from, like Tulika's, the academic left, to more popular left-wing, to publishers who publish on caste issues, on women's and gender issues, books for children and young adults, and so on. The idea was to set up a kind of umbrella organization of offering a wide range of books published from different perspectives and by different independent publishers. And this umbrella organization, we believed, could confront a challenge to the big multinational corporations who have several imprints, as we know, publishing in these areas. IPDA distributes and sells not just books, as I mentioned, of its 8 founding members, but also books of other small independent publishers across the country, whose numbers are many. Many of us who are independent publishers in India are also activists in other cultural, social, and political spheres, and we bring all those energies into our publishing activities as well as our collective endeavors. We share strategies, we share modes of survival, we share modes of distribution, dissemination of our ideas. So this is also the IPDA that we formed is a similar coming together of like-minded publishers and authors. And IPDA is a group member of the International Alliance of Independent Publishers, like it was till, and 2 of its partner members, Tulika Books and Women Unlimited, headed by Ritu Menon, have been members of the English network of the Alliance since the very beginning. It hasn't been an easy journey. The path of independent publishing, especially as we know, is a difficult one because we make no compromises vis-a-vis the basic values we stand for. However, we continue to believe that building collectives, strengthening the spirit of collective function is probably the most important way to overcome challenges at all times and in all contexts. Thank you.
Thank you, Hindu. Thank you, all speakers. We now have some time to exchange with our audience, which I think was very big and very faithful. And I would like to know if anyone would like to make a question on any subject. No one? Be brave. So I will make a question to Dorota, just to bring our discussions back. Dorota was speaking about the LGBTQI plus in Poland, and I thought it was very interesting, your explanation, and I was And then you said that there was a bookshop specialized in this subject, but I had a question. If these books, because these activists, it's a form of criticize the lack of books in this area. Are these books censored before they are published, or the publishing houses just don't publish because they are afraid of publishing?
Non, en fait, c'est le contraire.
No, actually, it's the contrary. The demand is so high in Poland for this kind of literature. Yeah. So this demand is a reaction to the social and political situation and the general situation in the society that is very divided nowadays. And so we have this bookshop that offers a large gallery, a large offer of feminist and LGBT books. And among the publishers, we have the trend, the tendency to open their work with that topic. We don't have censorship. The only censorship can come from the readers, because the Polish society is very divided. So the risk here is the economic risk. None of the big traditional publishing houses, among which we see brave ones, to propose this kind of literature to readers. So we don't have any form of censorship. The only one that I can talk about when I talk about research work with the Alliance is the censorship coming from the government. And so it takes the form of absence of support and funding for those who openly support LGBTQI plus books. And so it's economically censored by the government for this issue.
Okay, thank you, Dorota. Now I understand better. Thank you. Anyone has a question? Yes, there is someone who wants to. Marie-Michel, just your microphone. Yes, go on.
Oui, bonjour, rebonjour à tout le monde.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much for all these presentations. I would like to ask a question to Dieulermesson regarding this question of book donations. It's something that I worked in detail here in France, and I didn't really understand your intervention about big organizations who were asking for foreign publishers. I didn't really understand, so could you please go back to this?
Michel. Alors,
yes, of course. Thank you, Marie-Michel. So book donations in Haiti happen often through NGOs mostly. We even have a bookshop in, not a bookshop, a space that collects books coming from France mostly to be distributed in schools and libraries and so on. But sometimes among these NGOs, when they offer books as donations to libraries, they go to publishing houses to buy books. And in our case, it happened with 2 NGOs that wanted to buy books from authors who are published in France. But we have Haitian versions publishing of these books. And so when they came to us, we referred them to our librarian, and they made him understood that they wanted the foreign published copies, not the Haitian ones. But is the Haitian edition in the local language? No, it's in French always. We have a preference for books coming from France rather than those published locally, even if it's published in France. So what we do to avoid having always foreign editions and French editions in schools and libraries, we offer a reduction, a discount, as small as it can be, so that NGOs buy our books, our local books that are available in Haitian published copies. So that's the idea here. And we always also offer a copy, let's say a test copy, so that they can judge the quality of the publishing, and they see that there's no big difference, no difference at all between the local publishing and the foreign publishing. And then the issue sometimes is, why do you want to have the foreign copy? Because you think that the book looks nicer, the cover is prettier, the publishing work is done in a better way, while most of the time it's not really true. Most of the time we offer a quality book, a nice looking object, and so on. But we want Haitian publishing houses to be able to give their copies to librarians and to be available in schools and libraries and so on. So that was the idea.
Je laisse Laurence d'abord intervenir.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll give the floor to Laurence. Now you can go ahead, Marie-Michel, if you have other questions. Well, it is something very specific, actually, and this situation is quite tricky because these NGOs are mostly based in France and in French-speaking countries. I know that it's for Haiti or for Madagascar, it can be similar situation. And well, the solution we found is that we do not publish in French so that we avoid to be competing with French publishers. And that's a way to enhance, to put forward local language so that children, teenagers can read in their native language. And we push, and then you can push these NGOs to buy books in the local language. But if we don't, if we stick to the French language, it's quite hard to compete with the French publishers. And it's quite hard to compete on this market. I don't know if you also publish in local languages. Yes, I totally understand. Well, we have a plurilingual approach because we have texts in French. Also, we also have texts in Creole. We also have Spanish, French, Spanish, and sometimes English. But what we see is that these books, these novels that are published abroad, to translate them in the local language, we would need a whole framework of translation. We would need support from the state to translate all these books. And it's not that easy for us to translate a book in the local language. It's in Creole, for example. It's very specific. So there's the issue of the author's rights, intellectual property. But we also we mostly publish in French, but also in Creole. We have a large panel of books in Creole, but what you want to know is what is the request from these NGO? What do they want? So I'll take another example. Within the French institute where I used to work in Paris before I came here, well, the managers of the library wanted to feed the library with other books and buy new titles, so that there would be more books accessible to the students. So they went to the library, the bookshop, and they did book orders. And when they decided to do the orders, they would prefer to choose a French edition from a French publisher. So on our side, well, we decided to turn to a bookshop because we have very good relations with several bookshops. And we told the bookseller, this is the situation. Because the books that are published abroad are more expensive, we will do all we can so that the books from here can reach the library. So we have to agree to this cost reduction. And then we turned to the manager of the library, the director of the library, and of the institute to explain him this situation. And we managed to convince him to choose local publishers. We explained him that by choosing local publisher, this would actually support the economy and foster the economy. So we actually ended up trying to convince these NGOs or these different types of bodies. It's a struggle, really. It's a daily struggle. Thank you for your explanations.
Thank you very much, Marie-Michel and Dieulermesson. Anyone else have a question? Laurence.
Oui, merci beaucoup. J'ai une question.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Carlos in Peru. So we're talking about the presence of foreign bodies in some countries. So I was wondering, what is the situation like in Peru? What resources do you have as local Peruvian publishers to compete with foreign publishers?
Muy buena. Bueno, en Perú.
That's an excellent question. Right now, the two main agents in Peru are Planeta Publishing and a group of independent publishers, around 100 independent publishers in Peru. The activities that each one are very different. There is always a preference towards international publishers from the public, from the audience, and from mass media. Sometimes they always have all the authors in the forefront. Those authors usually collaborate with international publishers. That's how it works. Right now, currently, we are using bibliodiversity as a tool. We use it to differentiate ourselves from international publishers so that we can publish books in a very inclusive way. But it is true that that way we can spot all the mistakes that those big companies do. We pay more attention to that so that we can differentiate ourselves from bigger companies. So we publish less, but we try to publish better. And it's not just a matter of publishing and publishing, it's a matter of taking care of the author, of the content, the product itself, taking into account that it has an economic value, but it also has a cultural value, especially. So with our work, we try to reach that balance. And we try to get readers in this situation so that they understand that not only bestsellers are the ones that decide how the situation is going to be, and that it is really worth it to get closer to our contents.
Any other question? Indu, go on.
To Carlos again. I find it interesting that you mentioned, I mean, I think all of us as independent publishers try to publish better quality in terms of both content and production value, and in order to differentiate ourselves from the mainstream large publishing houses. In India, like in Peru, we do face competition from large corporate publishers who come from other Western countries, English language publishing, of course, which is just one wing of publishing. But I found it interesting when you said most authors go with the larger publishing houses, because in India, especially with Tulika books, our experience has been that we convince the best of authors to come to independent publishers, because the biggies are actually losing out in the game of nurturing authors, let's put it that way, working closely with authors, giving them what they want, giving them editorial work that they require. And we find that there is some authors, especially the better informed authors, find that very useful. Would you say that's true in Peru as well?
Ahí depende mucho también del perfil.
It depends on the profile of the authors. It depends on what they're looking for regarding a personal and professional approach. Of course, a big advance and economic, it's very important. But regarding how you want to face your professional future, I have the experience with one of our authors who is signing with a publishing house. He wasn't very happy because they was offered. He wants to have a publishing line, and he wants to be accompanied, to see the mistakes, to be helped, to wonder himself how the book has been created. And he says, if they say everything's good, that means something is not that good. So this cross-border, they have a lot of production. Sometimes they don't pass the necessary filters. Again, I think it's not good, but regarding what the author is looking for professionally, some of them are more oxygened and they look in a long-term career, and some of them. But I think we shouldn't establish prejudice for all of them, but try to focus on how we work with our collections, how careful we are, and how respectful we are with the work of the authors. This monitoring we were talking previously, it's very important, and some authors consider it to be important. All the authors are not, they are more egocentric, we could call it that way. But of course, it depends. It depends on the different profiles and the professional development.
Yes, I agree. I guess what we're asking of authors is also a social and political commitment to the publisher they choose, not just the economic and financial benefits.
Thank you, Indu and Carlos.
Thank you, Carlos.
Isabelle.
Oui, alors moi j'ai une question toujours pour Carlos.
So I have a question for Carlos. Carlos, I think you talked about citizens referendum. Was it about the book wrapping, the book production? I wanted to know what was the impact of this movement, this citizens movement. Did many people speak out about it? What was the situation like?
Yes, maybe in the translation, it wasn't understood. There is a legal framework established by the government, the Peruvian government, and they avoid the using of one single-use plastic. So it's regulated for all enterprises, not only publishing houses. Of course, we have a general framework and we need to adapt to it. Nevertheless, there are some practices because it's not a process that can happen from a day to the following. There is a translation, there are different delays that need to be done, but those delays can be shorter if citizenship are aware that plastics sometimes are necessary. Of course, from the association I lead, nowadays we have this consultation, and when we have a direct contact with the readers, especially in book fairs, we want to tell them that plastic in books is not necessary that the books are cared, we protect them, they can be read, easily read, they're not going to, that they don't need an extra plastic to protect them, and it's more to teach them to socialize in order to them to understand that it's just something accessory that damage everybody beyond the regulation of the state. And that's one of the biggest part from the ecological point of view. And we want to raise awareness in good practices around this using.
Ok, merci, je comprends mieux.
Great, thank you very much. It's all clear now.
Thank you, Isabel and Carlos. More questions? No? Laurence, would you like to say something else?
Marie-Michel, est-ce que tu as encore la main levée ou tu as une question?
Marie-Michel, I see that you have your hand raised. Go ahead.
Sorry, I haven't seen, sorry. Go on.
Yes, I just wanted to share my experience about social publishing. As you know, Madagascar is the poorest country in the world. So of course, no one has buying power. So you were talking about the author's rights that could be lost along the way. And while we did try to implement in Madagascar, well, when there is no buying power, I still want to reach out to as many children as I can. So I founded an association that promotes the access to books. And I also encourage many NGOs to buy books for children's books. And I think the authors are not losing in this situation. So these associations, these NGOs are mainly our clients. They are buying a lot. Well, even if a book can be read by around 50 children, it's never lost for the author. It's still something. And the author can have encounters with the children too. So for us, it's a solution. on the local stage to reach out to children and to sell books.
Thank you, Marie-Michel. And Pedro? Your microphone, yes.
Bonjour tout le monde. Alors moi, ma question,
Good afternoon, everyone. My question is about solidarity publishing during the intervention. I think that I understood that the objective was to have freedom of publishing. And to come back on what has been said earlier, unfortunately, we could not get into details in the presentation, but I wanted to ask why we could not promote this form of solidarity even more. Pedro, I'm really sorry but we cannot hear you very well. Can you maybe move closer to the mic, because I'm afraid the interpreters cannot hear you very well. Thank you. Is it better now? Yes, it's better. Thank you. And can you sum up what you've said quickly so that we can continue? Yes, my question is for Indu. It's about solidarity-based publishing. I think it's a good condition to reach complete freedom of publishing that Dieulermesson was talking about earlier. So the experience that she presented to us, and that unfortunately didn't live long, I wanted to ask, why not promote this form of solidarity? Because it can help fight and resist the pressures of the state or other instances on us independent publishers. Thank you.
Just to respond very briefly, Pedro, I agree completely with you. And like I mentioned, solidarity publishing is a very, I think, an important way for independent publishers to come together. Because independent publishers, I don't know if this is true in other parts of the world, but definitely in our country, instinctively share problems, issues, solutions among themselves, which the bigger publishers who are competitors, even independent publishers who are competing in the same market for the similar books, are willing to share, which is not true necessarily of larger mainstream corporate publishers. And as a further example of collective publishing, if you want to call it that, we also have had experiments, not all of them very successful, but definitely showing the way forward of pooling resources. What are the constraints that independent publishers most often have? They're very linked to economic and human resources. That is, we are all small houses, and we, because we survive on the proceeds, the revenues we make from selling our books alone, we don't have any other sources of income, which is one of the definitions of independent publishing. We find ourselves surviving literally from book to book. And one way in which some of us in India, at least, have tried to overcome that is by sharing resources. Create a pool of editors. Okay, editors meaning copy editors who, work for 3, 4, 5 of us who bring out similar books or similar in similar subject areas. Create a pool of printers, of production houses, designers, whom we can share. So we may not be able to individually employ a designer who deserves a high income, a high salary, or a high fee. But if 3 or 4 of us pool our resources, we may be able to afford. So there are experiments like this, and I completely agree with you, this is a way forward that we must think of, especially within the Alliance going forward, which we have done in the past. Our co-publishing initiatives, I think, are, underline this need for collective functioning. Thank you.
Thank you, Pedro and Indu. I think I would say some things about the subject, but perhaps we are already late in our meeting, and I'll pass the word to Laurence.
Merci beaucoup, c'est très rapide.
Thank you very much. Yes, very quickly, I just wanted to say that the guide to good practice that we've been talking about during this meeting is online, has been since this morning on our website. You can find the link to the guide in various languages in the chat, so please feel free to download it, share it, and update it with examples, sources of inspiration, from your various countries and regions. And most of all, before giving the floor before giving the final remarks, I wanted to thank Mariana for her facilitating role of this roundtable. I also wanted to thank all of our presenters for their presence and their preparation. And I also wanted to tell you that we have a next roundtable in 20 minutes. So you have all the information on the website about the role of independent publishing. So it's organized by the Spanish-speaking network of the Alliance, and you have all the information and links on the website. Mariana, the final word is to you. And oh, sorry, I also wanted to thank our interpreting team for the huge work, because it's a huge work, and thank you to the interpreters.
Thank you very much for all of you. After all of the talks, I felt like I wanted to contribute and say more things, but we don't have this time. And I feel that we could spend more time here talking about our experiences. I would talk about the Brazilian groups of editors' experience, but perhaps it can be a subject of a next meeting, perhaps in the next conference, everybody all together. Please read the guide. I think it's a very inspiring document for all of us. For those who don't have, who cannot implement some of the things that are there, or to have ideas to implement better what you do in your daily work. And I think I hope to meet you very soon. I won't be able to be in 20 minutes, but tomorrow in the next meetings, I'll be there as an audience, okay? Thank you very much for everybody who was here this morning or afternoon. Bye-bye.
Merci. Au revoir.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, Indu. Thank you so much.
Au revoir.
Au revoir, Dieulermesson. Merci.